Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining our channel. Innocent Love, I really appreciate that. And today I wanted to give another loving advice for people who are already together, whether they are married, whether they are engaged, whether they are in a romantic relationship, whatever you want to call it. I want to talk about those people. And I want to talk about something that is extremely important in a relationship, and it's even important in a friendship or important in family. I think this is so important because a lot of people are afraid of exercising that for so many reasons. There could be personal reasons, it could be financial reasons, it could be reasons that are embarrassing, or anything you want to call that. So my topic that I want to talk about is one simple word. The word is called communications. Communications in a relationship is, I think, one of the most important thing, and one of the things that is, if applied properly and consistency throughout the relationship, will prevent many things that could go wrong in a relationship. You know, whether it goes to a breakup, whether it comes to a misunderstanding or anything. Communication is so important. And I've seen so many couples, so many people who have lacked that very simple thing. For whatever reason, people are afraid to communicate with their partner, and it could go both ways. It could be the woman to the man or the man to the woman. It don't matter. Communication is something that is a necessity, and I think that if you don't have the communication aspect exercised throughout the relationship, then many things can happen, such as misunderstanding or lack of trust, or just simply being afraid of trying to find things out about the other person or telling about yourself towards the other person. For example, a certain scenario, it could be that a person doesn't communicate because the person is just simply scared of telling the person the truth. Because if the person doesn't, the person is maybe afraid of telling the truth, and maybe afraid that because if I do tell the truth, then I could lose the person. Or if I do tell the truth, then maybe the person won't look at me the same way. And this is the reason why people sometimes do not communicate, because of fear, or they're not communicating because of embarrassment. What if she doesn't look at me the same way if I tell that? Or what if he doesn't look at me the same way if I tell him that? So it's kind of like the fear, the embarrassment, and maybe it could also be pride. It could be because the person is not fully committed, that the person doesn't want to communicate. And plus, you know, some people also don't communicate because they feel like they make themselves vulnerable. And what happens is, if they say too much about themselves or trying to communicate everything about them, then they put themselves in a position where, okay, the other person can take advantage of me. And what happens is that you actually even though you're not communicating, you're actually exercising lack of trust to the other person. And the lack of trust could be because of other reasons. It could be because maybe past hurts in a previous relationship, or it could be fear of getting put to the side or being looked down to. So many different reasons why people don't communicate. I mean, I can put a whole list of things why people don't communicate. And what happens is, if you don't communicate over a certain amount of time, over a certain length, when certain things do arise, then people get into arguments and getting into fights over simple things that could have been prevented if they would just simply communicate. And plus, communication is also a very strong point, because if you communicate, first of all, you get to know the person more. You get to know the other person in a much deeper level. You start to understand the person better. And what happens is, because you understand the person much better, you actually developing trust. It comes naturally because you know the person so much better, and it goes both ways. It's the same thing. Communication is an essential part in a relationship, and I believe that so many people who have not exercised that, those are the people who, for example, got into a very bitter relationship. Maybe they got divorced, maybe they broke up over silly reasons, and they thought the issue was this, and the issue was that, and the issue was finances, and the issue was friends, or whatever you want to call it. And underneath that, it is actually a different issue that causes that couple or whatever to separate, and it is simply the lack of communication. And we sometimes blame other reasons why these things happen, but it actually didn't. It was actually just a simple lack of communication. Now, communication also has other benefits. For example, if you communicate with the person, you're actually able to determine whether the person is the right person for you, because through communication, obviously, you get to know the person much better. And with that said, it also prevents you from getting hurt in both ways, not just, because you don't communicate with the person, or you communicate with the person and but you also, because of the communication, you see things about the person ahead of time, and vice versa. And what happens is you see things before you even go there. So before you even go into a deeper part of the relationship, or maybe you decide to marry that person, because you always exercise your communication, what happens is that it is actually a preventable practice, because you see things much earlier. Maybe you see any warning signs, maybe you see flags, and what happens is, because you communicate all the time, you know that the person is not the right person for you, or you know that the person is the right person for you. So it goes both ways. So communication is it is a magnifying lens on your relationship. It basically exposes all the little things that you would not normally see in the other partner if it weren't for communication. So communication is a great friend of yours that you should exercise in any relationship, marriage, engagement, even a friendship, because it just exposes all the hidden things in your life, and it shows the other person of who you really are, and you also get to know the other person of who they really are, because you exercise the communication. So communication is something that everybody, I believe, needs to practice. I need to practice myself. I think if there's anybody out there who says that we communicate all the time, I don't know about that, I'll be honest. I think that everybody can communicate a little more with other people instead of holding things inside. I believe that if you hold things inside, you're putting it under a carpet and you don't tell the other person about it. And what happens is, if a certain scenario comes up, then all of a sudden you're gonna take that hidden thing, that hurt or whatever, that anxiety, that anger, whatever you have, you're gonna take it under the rock, out of the rock, and you're just going to expose it. And then what happens is, you're going to have an argument, you're going to have a fight over that, because you hid it inside you, and you never really gave it the chance of letting it out there and talk about the situation and communicate about it. So with that said, for those who are listening, guys, girls, married couples, singles, even if you have friends or family, communication is a great friend. And I strongly suggest that you practice communication with your partner all the time. Now, if the other partner doesn't want to communicate to you, but you want to communicate to them, then you showing your part of communicating will enable, most likely, the other person to communicate back to you, because the person sees that you're not hiding anything, you're trying to be honest with them, you're trying to represent yourself and your true self. It will actually open the other person to communicate back to you. And because of that, you will constantly feed each other, because to say you're communicating to them, so automatically the other person wants to communicate back to you. Now, for those who don't want to communicate at all, like if you are a couple that never really communicated with the other person and vice versa, and you're okay with that, then you should ask yourself the question, are you living in an honest relationship? Are you really knowing the other person as much as you think you do? Now, that's when the ego and the pride comes in, because sometimes it's you know what, I don't need to communicate because I don't have to worry about these things. Yes, it is important to trust the other person. It is important to know that the other person does things right, but still, if you don't think you need to communicate, you have to ask yourself the question, why you don't. Now, if you have nothing to lose or you think you're okay, then maybe it's because maybe you're trying to not get hurt. Maybe you don't want to know anything more about the other person. And then you have to ask yourself the question, do you really love the other person? Because if you do truly love the other person, then you really want to know everything about them. And you also want to tell everything about yourself to the other person in time. I'm not saying you say it all at once, because you don't want to scare the other person off either. But if you really love the other person, then you should really tell the other person exactly who you are, and in time really show the person, you know, through your practice, that you love the other person, through communication, and really staying open to that. So with that said, I hope that I have given some people some advice. And if you don't practice communication, I suggest that you do. Even if you take like little tiny baby steps, it'll help you more and more to communicate. And I promise you, if you do communicate more, no matter in what situation you are, you have a clearer picture about your relationship, and you see it very clearly whether the person is the right person for you or not. Either way, it's going to be a benefit to you. Even though it may not be a positive benefit, it is going to be the true benefit, and you should always listen to what is true in your partner and act on that. Obviously pray about it too, but at the same time, if you know who the other person is and you are happy, it's only because you found that out through communication. So with that said, guys, I hope you like what I gave you today. If you have not subscribed, I please you to subscribe to our channel and share this channel with everybody that wants to know anything about relationship, on having an honest relationship. So with that said, guys, thank you so much. Peace out.